All right, so mass and weight. How much something moves when it's in reaction to something else. And I like to set this up first as like a set of two collisions. I think helps us get things going here. So let's go ahead and make one sphere. I'll get the anchor point going, control home, and then control alt home. And let's label this. I'm going to call this one starter. And if I want to drill down on this, even after we've made it, under the contents, ellipse, path, stroke, and fill, down here, I've encouraged you guys to learn your shortcuts, right, for this one. So P is R, scale, opacity, T, right. But if you drill down, anytime you see the little caret, that means you can keep getting more options, right? And so, for instance, here, contents, ellipse, it's all separated out, kind of like how you would see it in Illustrator. Stroke, fill, and all those can be changed. These don't even have a stroke, but we could change the fill. Let's change this to something more like that. And we'll call this impact heavy. Cool. So I want to have this hit that and that look like it's heavy, right? So this one needs to go fast, and when it hits this one, if it's heavy, it should not move a whole lot, right? So let's set that up. So under starter, within a few frames here, position, keyframe, and let's say right about here. I'll move it over so it makes contact. Again, I'm holding down Shift, make sure it goes in the straight line. And we'll get right about there-ish. And when it hits this, it should bounce off, right? We're looking at this like as if it were, I imagine this being like a top-down view of these, like on a pool table. And so this one should bounce off some. And so moving the playhead forward some more, hold down Shift, move this back, just a little bit. And by default, everything's linear, remember? So we get not that great. But let's tune this up. And then just getting the basic motion in place. The impact heavy, this ball should not move until here, right? When we actually make contact. And so that's where that should get its first position keyframe. And if it doesn't move that much, I'll have it just sort of over this way. And again, I'll hold down Shift and drag it over a little bit. So it's like so. All right, so the default linear, I mean, things are, the blocking, for your theater people is happening, like the people are where they're supposed to be at the right time, but how they're getting there is terrible, right? We need to tune this a bunch. So we need to go to the graph editor here. How do I make it full screen? Tilde, exactly. The graph editor, this was confusing to some people, only shows things that you have selected by default. And so if you're not seeing the thing that you want to see, you need to select it over here. I'm going to select all of these keyframes here. And I want to work with just the X in this case. I'm going to separate the dimensions like we did before. So that gives us our Bezier handles to be able to manipulate. And now, essentially what the small ball is doing, right? That's what we're looking at right now is the X information for the small ball, right? We want it to start slow, speed up, and hit that and ricochet off, right? So it needs to be starting slower. I'm bringing this Bezier handle down to give it a slower start. Up here at the top, this is where it needs to be going most quickly. And just like the bounce for the bouncing ball, this needs to shift. So holding down Alt allows me to break that handle so that that gives us that sharp bounce. So this also can drive me crazy sometimes. I'll move this one, hold down Alt. When you press Alt, it changes the icon. Drag it down. But then don't press Alt again. Now they're broken, and you can manipulate them independently, right? There's a bunch of things like that in After Effects where the interface is not that great. Thing to be careful of, overshoot. Once you start working with the Bezier handles, you can do stuff like this. And so now, if we look at how that actually pans out, we don't even need to see this one right now. Right, it ends up going past and back. So this is something you need to be careful of with the handles in particular, is that you're not going to go past. This one should probably just be kind of straight, and this one probably a little bit shorter. The longer the handle is, the more curve influence it has. And so I'm going to make this one a little bit longer in this way so that it seems like it's really picking up some speed on the way to the impact, right? So this should look very familiar. This looks like what you did for the bounce, right? To get the bounce happening, except it was in, when you did the bouncing ball, it was in which dimension, the bounce? Y, right. And because After Effects is upside down, the bounce looks like it's upside down in the graph editor. Everybody wrapping their minds around that now? But here we're on the x-axis, so it doesn't really matter. So we're speeding up, bouncing off that, and then slowing down. So if we see what that looks like now, tilde. And here, we're decelerating on the opposite side. So most curvature here, least curvature here. So the inverse of this one. Then if we turn this guy on, and come back over here, these should be Bezier handles. And again, I want to be able to adjust these independently. So I'm going to separate dimensions. So I'm not sure I mentioned this before. The separate dimensions, you can, I think we did it before we right-clicked, right? And said separate dimensions. This button here is also separate dimensions. So we'll do that. And now this, does it need to look like this or this? Who thinks this one? Raise your hands. I'll take your arm, your hand height as an indication of your confidence. Who thinks it should be this one? Why do you think it should be this one? Remember, more curvature equals more velocity. And so where do we want this ball? This is the ball. We're controlling the one for the ball that we hit, the big ball. We want it to be, the moment we hit it, should be the fastest that it goes, right? So we want curvature here, and then decelerating into its final position. So if you look at this now, There we go. Now, what if we wanted the ball, that's not bad. Let me fix the hitch in there at the end. What if we wanted the ball to actually move less, like it doesn't go as far? What on this graph needs to change? What's that, Fernando?
Would you make it more straight or slow it down?
No, we don't need to adjust the quality of the curve at all. If we just don't want it to move as far, what do we need to do?
Change the keyframe back a few.
But how does that happen here? What does it need to do?
Make the handle shorter than the curve.
It doesn't. You're not going to need to use the handles. Yes, this one. This is, remember, we're seeing the amount of movement on the x-axis, right? And so it's the location of this keyframe this way that changes how far the ball is going to move. And so if these two are together, it would not move at all. So the distance between these two is the actual amount of movement that it's going to do. So if we want it to not move as much, we can grab this one and drag it down. Again, holding down Shift to make sure you don't like slide it left or right to keep the timing the same. And it doesn't sympathetically move the handles, so you need to adjust your handles to dial that back in. But now it'll move less. So it just moves a little bit. What if I wanted the starter ball to not take as long to go across the screen? Like I like this fast, it speeds up, but the whole thing seems to take too long. What needs to change?
Shortening the distance of the curve.
Okay, yeah. This one, if you probably want to keep this where it is, right?
Yeah.
Because everything is keyframed already. And so we can just change the point at which it starts. And so this one could move forward in time to make the total time during which it's accelerating less. And so grabbing this one and hold down Shift again and something like that. There we go. And so now I don't need this stuff up here. I want to change my work area to start here. Anybody remember that shortcut? B. Yeah, B for the beginning. There we go. Even shorter. I'm going to grab this one, hold down Shift. Bring that in. Cool, it doesn't seem to accelerate quite as much. I'm going to grab this handle, extend that, so that really, the more curvature we get here, the more acceleration. There we go. So now we get something that really feels like these two objects have mass. They're not just pixels. How would you say you're understanding what I'm telling you right now? It's tough to grok in the middle of the afternoon. I don't know whether people just ate and then come over here and they're kind of like in a stupor, or
There's just a lot of things to remember.
yeah. Do you have a question, Alejandro?
Yes.
Okay. Right. Essentially, it's the same thing as the bounce, the homework, right? But you're doing it horizontally not vertically. And it's just a matter of thinking, if we look at all of it together, here, peel down, control, there we go. We can see all the curves at the same time, right? So this is the small ball, and that's the big ball, right? And so in order for the whole thing to work, this needs to be at the same time, right? This is where they make impact, right? If you hit the big ball and then it doesn't move till later, that's going to look weird. So those need to be at the same time. And then they're both decelerating, and the distance between the height is, you know, how much each one decelerates. If we wanted to give the big ball an even greater appearance of more mass, if you have a small thing bouncing off a big thing, it would probably bounce further. So if we wanted the small ball to bounce further, we could take this and move it which way? Down, exactly. And then probably tune your handles a little bit. And like I said, everything is in the ease universe here, right? That's the whole name of the game, is tuning the acceleration and deceleration of the whole thing. Let's look at that. Yeah, that's even better. Sort of gives you more of a sense that the small ball is kind of light and the other ball is heavier. Doesn't move as much, and the other one bounces off quite a lot. Cool, let's all give that much a shot. Remember, none of this is possible unless you separate dimensions. You gotta separate dimensions to get in there and tune all this stuff. So add this to your, same project you've been working on. Make a new comp. Be sure when you make a new comp, don't make another 30-second comp. Maybe like 5 or 6 seconds is plenty. I'll be right back. I'm just going to grab some water. takes too long to get across the screen. Such a short time between keyframes. AJ needs to decelerate.
I know.
Like that. So I think the small ball needs to accelerate more.
Yeah, I think it's a little too mechanical.
Yeah, yeah. So if it looks too mechanical, does that mean you need more curving or less curving?
More curving.
More curving. Do which part? Seeing graph? You need to set a position keyframe, so you need to select the layer. The shape layer. Yeah. P for position. So you need to set some presets. You need to separate dimensions. You gotta separate, So you're gonna want to separate dimensions again. Oh, you gotta click on. So that's the default, so yeah, you want the most change here. Here's how you go. You want to get it flatter this time as well. There's the other things. Once. You're just working like 10 pixels there. What's wrong?
So I actually don't like things, but I also agree with themselves reporting, and I think it's gonna get control. So I didn't want to agree with them, because I didn't want to use it, but, I don't know, if there was a certain guy that he's,
I don't think your student license works. Has anyone tried that? Logging in with their student Adobe ID at home? Like no one's tried it? Like if you don't have your own private CC account, give that a shot between now and Thursday. I don't think the lab here will be open. So right now, we're getting the lab hours nailed down, but this room will definitely be open on Fridays. Other days there's classes in here, but Fridays for sure. And Tuesday, so Mondays and two.
Oh, it is, okay, 7 or 2, okay. Okay.
That's good. I think you just need to like accelerate. Not necessarily, you just have to accelerate. That's the scale. Yeah. It's- We want the little volume, the big volume, a little bit. Which I think the big volume, a little bit. Yeah, so there, P. I think yours is just way too long, so you should be. Well, let's see your. Yeah, okay, so you got this one across, and then you want this one across. I just want to be in the middle. So once you set this one, well, first of all, let's change. Instead of 30 seconds, I'm gonna like 6. So now. The anchor point is in the middle. That's what that wasn't before. So you got one there. So right about here. I move it over so it makes it have the fall. Yeah, so. See how they changed there? You don't want to double click on it. Just- So you just click and drag. There you go. Hold down shift.